Alright, so dear watchers, you find me in a very odd situation. See, I love Steven Spielberg. He's one of my favorite living directors and also one of my favorite film directors of all time. But on the other hand, he's adapting a source material that I hate. Actually, no, I don't hate the book Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I friggin' despise it. I loathe it with the passion of 1,000 burning suns. The literary version of the main character in Ready Player One ranks high among my most detestable protagonists that I have ever read, and I'm counting Bella Swan from Twilight and Holden Caulfield from A Catcher in the Rye. So that should give you an idea of the situation I found myself in when I walked into the theater last week in order to watch this film. So, how did I fare? Well, it's interesting. Because I honestly did like this film a lot better than what I had read in the book, which is which is an easy feat because the book is garbage. My biggest problem with the original version of the main character Wade Watts, played in the film by Ty Sheridan, is that in the book he talks like Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. You remember that scene about business cards and how he was almost obsessive and compulsive to a frankly psychotic degree? That is how Wade talks about everything relating to pop culture. He talks about video games, films, and television with this degree of haughty arrogance that is practically insufferable to get through. Thankfully, the film doesn't do that. Instead, the film turns Wade into more of an everyman. Wade is just another kid living in a bunch of slums in Columbus, Ohio, in the far off future of 2045. He, like everybody else, plays in this massive virtual reality world called the Oasis, which was created by a guy named James Halliday, played by Mark Rylance in the film. And so you get to see the journey of Wade as he explores this world, and he also lets you in on what's one of the main activities to do here, which aside from playing various different games, a bunch of people really find it interesting to try to pursue James Holliday's Easter egg that he hid in the game, and whoever finds it gets $1 trillion and control over the entire Oasis. So naturally, this puts him at odds with an evil mega corporation, with a leader played by Ben Mendelsohn, and you end up seeing Wade team up with a bunch of ragtag teenagers. Some of them one of them is played by Olivia Cooke, who we just saw in Thoroughbreds 2 weeks ago. And while she's pretty good in the film, she's also very much wasted, as with all the other supporting characters are wasted. Because the film is much more interested in just cramming as much pop culture references into your screaming face as you possibly can handle. But that's one of the reasons why I was just not in love with this film. I tolerated it for other reasons and for mostly because I appreciated what it did in order to try to improve the book. Some people may be disappointed by the fact that this film adaptation is not a direct book-to-screen adaptation, but people need to remember that this is not Spielberg's first time at this. He very infamously changed up the tone and contents of both Jaws and Jurassic Park to fit much more blockbuster sensibilities. Jaws was a very wretched, pulpy novel from the 70s, whereas Jurassic Park, written by the great Michael Crichton, is extremely overwritten, and many of the characters are just plain unlikable. Chief among them, the creator of that whole theme park. In the film, you might remember him as being this cheerful old man who just wants to play with dinosaurs. And Spielberg does something similar with the creator of the Oasis in Ready Player One. He turns the character of James Halliday away from his Steve Jobs analog in the book and more into a tragic figure. A man who has suffered a massive neurological disorder and that's prevented him from enjoying what's really important out of life. So, at the end of his time on this earth, he essentially creates this game in order to find a successor to the Oasis, and he also wants it to be somebody who will not repeat his own mistakes. Hence, a lot of the tests relate to many critical events in Holiday's life. And I really like these aspects of the film because, one, Holiday is portrayed by Mark Rylance, and Mark Rylance is endlessly entertaining whatever he's in. And I really have been enjoying the cooperation between Spielberg and Rylance over the past 3 films they've worked on together. And furthermore, this is also really where the heart of the movie is. And honestly, it's a heart that doesn't really go all the way, especially in the climax that almost feels kind of cheating because they want to get to this massive crescendo, an emotional peak that just doesn't feel earned because the movie is so obsessed with just presenting you with all of this Warner Brothers intellectual property rights that they own and slamming them out onto a big screen. So yeah, you'll get all sorts of references from Batman to Overwatch to Battletoads to Back to the Future to King Kong. Look, yeah, you get all those really cool references, but that's the problem. They're just references. They don't add anything to the story. Nobody really makes any good jokes out of these references. They're just there for their own sake. And look, some people are some people are okay with that, and that's fine. But some people are genuinely defending this whole choice as like, oh well, that's just how it is in the book. No, the book uses these references because the main character, as I already established, is a complete psychopath who memorizes all this crap. And he basically solves all of the game's challenges by using this extensive pop culture history knowledge. In the film, because they took all that away, all this pop culture stuff is just filler. It's just background noise, and it just sort of bleeds together after a while. Now, granted, there were 1 or 2 references that were genuinely good and gave me a chuckle, but others just feel completely pointless. Namely, your main character, Wade, drives around in a DeLorean from Back to the Future, and also one of his best friends walks around in the Iron Giant, who, if you've never seen that film, great film, it also endorses a non-violent message. Well, the film, the Iron Giant basically stomps around and murders a whole bunch of people, but, whatever. So, many people were defending this whole choice as like, oh, well, these are just modifications to the Oasis in which people are able to express what they like. And that's fine, but nothing comes of this. None of the characters explain why these characters mean anything to them. Hell, they don't even use any of these characters for visual shorthand to tell a story. Maybe something like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World that utilized countless video game references in order to basically tell its story. And I'm not talking just in terms of the visuals, I'm talking in terms of sound as well. But that's not what this film does. It's honestly on par with any Jason Seltzer, Aaron Friedberg disaster movie that they made back in the 2000s that was just an overloaded yearbook of every single film that came out in the past few months. That's all it is. Now granted, just to pull back on my meanness, the film does actually look good. This actually does have some pretty impressive CGI, and some of the action scenes are genuinely well shot, to the point that it reminded me of one of Spielberg's other films, The Adventures of Tintin. But, as I've said countless times, especially with the Transformers films, an action scene without characters that I give a damn about is completely lifeless. It's just inert. And I gotta knock the film down significantly for that. Granted, for the major steps that it took to try to correct a lot of the issues that I had with the Ready Player One, the book, and for adding in this whole avenue concerning James Halliday, and the fact that the CGI generally does look good, I can defend this to be an okay matinee visit to the theaters, but nothing more than that. So I'm going to give this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Give it a look-see, but it's definitely not something you need to go rush out and claim your seat in the theaters. I'm Christopher Jaramillo, and I will see you at the lobby.